This is Driving Solutions, exclusively on CBTNews.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of Driving Solutions right here at CBTNews.com. We are joined today by Mark Vickery, who's the Assistant Vice President of Performance Management at Cox Automotive, to talk about how AI is helping dealers personalize the consumer experience and why that matters now more than ever. So Mark, great to have you back on the show. It's been too long. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your schedule with us.
Thank you, Jim. It's always great to see you.
Sure. So here's the big question. What is on the minds of today's dealer? And you know, I know that your team is working diligently to figure all of this AI out. So talk to us about this.
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time with dealers here in the last year or so as we've kind of gone on this latest transformation in our business. And, you know, one thing hasn't changed. They want to connect with car shoppers in a way that feels real. You know, AI, a big misconception, is not about replacing that connection. It's about helping us get there faster and, you know, more confidently.
Yeah, good, very good point. So dealers are making those connections. Cox Automotive's most recent study found that the car shopper satisfaction is actually at an all-time high. What's driving that?
You know, I think the dealers that are seeing the biggest gains are the ones who are leaning into providing personalization, transparency, you know, and actually giving up control to the consumer. You know, when a shopper feels like the team that they're dealing with knows them, and not just their name, you know, but their shopping journey and what that's when satisfaction spikes. You know, so yeah, dealers, you know, these new tools are allowing dealers to be more efficient for sure, and profitable. But I think the real win is they're creating loyalty with their customer.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Can you explain what you mean by knowing a shopper by their shopping journey?
Yeah, crazy word, right? It used to be called the road to the sale.
Right.
So, you know, listen, it's really driven by data. You know, we can see that shoppers are, you know, browsing on AutoTrader, when they're appraising cars on Kelley Blue Book, and certainly, you know, what they're looking at on the dealer's website itself. You know, that tells us a lot about the consumer, what kind of vehicle they want, what they're looking to trade in, and maybe even how much they're willing to pay.
Yeah, there's no question. And you guys have got such a bank of data like no other company out there. Let's dig into the tech. We're always talking about using data on the show. How do you put it to work? That's the big question.
Yeah, you know, so let's say, Jim, you're out shopping for a car. You know, you've maybe compared some prices. You've gotten some online trade-in evaluations on your current car. You've played around with some financing and payment ranges, and, you know, maybe have a good idea of what the monthly payment is looking like for you. You know, well, Vin Solutions Predictive Insights with Gen AI uses that data to determine your readiness to buy and alerts the dealership when you're ready to go. You know, maybe even before you've told them that you're ready to go. And even better, it will prioritize those leads so dealership staff can focus on, you know, the ones that matter the most.
Sure.
You know, and then there's Gen AI, and that uses all of that data that you provided online and really gets to know who you are and what you're looking for, drafting messages like, hey, Jim, I see you're looking for a new Ford Explorer. Here's a trade-in offer on your current vehicle. Would you like to come in for a test drive? You know, and it just does all the heavy lifting so your people can focus on, you know, building relationships.
That's right. And you're bringing the retail automotive sector into the 21st century by doing this, because other companies like Amazon and others have found their way to the consumer through the same means, right? I mean, this level of service is really now expected by today's automotive shopper, right?
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. You know, 100% right.
Yeah. Your performance management team is in the trenches with dealers day in and day out. Any tips from the field on how dealers can optimize these AI tools to drive both satisfaction and results?
Yeah, you know, you're right. That's a big part of our the way we come to market is the performance managers are in the thick of the software every day with dealers all across the country. But they're much more than just technical support. You know, every performance manager on our team comes from dealership experience. So they worked in car dealerships selling cars.
Oh, that's
so
great.
they're to help our dealers think through the big picture. software utilization is important, certainly, but what about strategy and processes, and what KPIs should we measure, and so on, right?
Sure.
So to me, having a partner that supports you in the way, in that way, is a big part of the equation for getting value out of that software. But the end, and when it comes down to it, it's up to your culture, the dealer's culture, to drive us into the future. It's about helping your teams, lean into change, because it is a difference. This is a different way to sell a car in large ways, and feel confident navigating, what's next.
Yeah, no question.
Think about, Jim, when we first started getting internet leads. If you go back to whenever that, dark ages were,
probably around mid 90s, mid to late 90s,
mid 90s,
right?
going into late 90s.
Yeah,
that was a challenging time for us. The leads came on the fax machine, and we farmed them out to salespeople, and we didn't know what to do, what to say, what to talk about, and everybody was nobody was serious. It was all about, they were looking for $10,000 cars, and well, guess what? We figured out how to handle those leads, and how to process them, and how to properly set them up to get an appointment, and then ultimately sell a car. This is no different than that. We are going to maybe be with the customer throughout their entire time in the dealership, rather than leaving them alone to search our competitors' inventory while we're at the sales desk getting numbers.
And that's exactly what they do, right?
That is exactly right. And so that's all we're doing now. We're really kind of selling the car the same way we always have. We're just gonna interact with the consumer in different ways, with more data than we've ever had before.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, the study we mentioned earlier also maps out the emotional highs and lows consumers feel as they purchase a vehicle. How can dealers show up better during these moments?
Yeah, so I think we've seen that buyers are the most satisfied when the sales team is knowledgeable and supportive. And you said it earlier, Jim. We do this in every other thing we buy, in even Amazon, for goodness sakes. They know when I need toilet paper. I don't have to tell them. They just send it. So,
how do they know that?
Because they know, man. They know how much I use, and so AI helps us, show up earlier, before the shopper even walks in. Right? Predictive insights tells us who's likely to buy and when they're getting ready to buy. Gen AI helps us speak to them in a way that feels personal. It's about building connections, I think.
No question. Any final thoughts as we close this segment out that dealers can implement AI and automation?
Yeah, so I think, the dealerships that put people first, and maybe not even just their customers, but also their employees, you got to be aligned with values that the technology brings to the party, right? Sure. Creating cultures where the tech doesn't replace the humans, it just supports them, and gives them the tools to meet customers where they are when they're there, and clears away clutter, so the staff can focus on, the important things like building customer relationships, and answering questions in real time, face to face, in the same screen together, right? What are the next steps that matter to the customer, not to me, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that long ago, if you broke from my road to the sale, I'd just soon not sell you the car. Okay, well now we're gonna follow them on the journey that they want to go on.
Yeah,
because,
no question.
I don't think the great customer experience is just kind of a good thing to have. It's the price of admission going forward. And
I agree. I completely agree. For those dealers that want to not just survive but thrive in the future, these kinds of tools are essential to the bottom line, right?
And guess what? We're going to get there. Tomorrow's happening whether we wanted to or not. Yeah. You can think back to that internet analogy from, say, 97. Yeah. We got where we got.
That's right.
It happened. Okay?
That's right.
We didn't choose for it to happen. It happened.
Right.
That's what this is. So it's up to leaders and managers and vendor partners like us at Cox Automotive to help teams believe in the tools that we've built and what's possible when we embrace them.
That's right. I was in the business even before the internet. I'm really dating myself right now, but there's a lot of dealers out there my age, so they can appreciate this. But I was in the selling cars and managing showrooms when somebody would walk in with a Consumer Reports underneath their arm, and we would like scatter and go, oh my God, you've got this individual that's going to hold you up to every single safety feature. They knew more about the car than you did. They would take weeks to buy a vehicle from the time they visited the dealership. So, salespeople were diving underneath the desk. And then, of course, when the internet came along, it was the same kind of thing. Somebody came in and said, hey, I was just on your website, or I was on the internet, and here's what I found. And you're like, oh my gosh, when are we going to get a break? And now to see that that's all shifted, right?
The internet doesn't have any cars. You want to buy a car, you're going to buy it from me.
We used all those lines, right? Absolutely, exactly. Well, maybe you'd like to have the internet service your car. But at the end of the day, the industry embraced the internet, and obviously now it's the greatest tool out there for dealers. And now,
I think it's our opportunity to grab back some of our declining margins. I mean, customers that listen. I don't know how often you shop on Amazon. Amazon comes to my house almost every day, and 0% of the time do I shop their prices.
Same.
All I know is I pick up my phone, and I've got a new roll of Saran wrap showing up tomorrow.
They make it way too easy. They make it way too easy to buy a product. It's unbelievable.
And it's because it's easier. I enjoy that. That's what we're talking about here. We're spending more money in F&I than they were without these tools.
Isn't that great?
That's good, right?
That's fantastic. Great for the dealer, for the consumer, for everybody involved. It really
right
is.
On.
So no question about it. Mark Vickery, Assistant Vice President of Performance Management at Cox Automotive. It is always a pleasure catching up with you, sir. This is great information for our dealer community. So thank you so much for stopping by CBT. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Great to see you, as
you
always.
Too.
Thanks for watching Driving Solutions, exclusively on CBTNews.com.